Hello. Yes, welcome. It's time for another really fucking weird fanfic. All props to the Watermelon. You may know him from the Discord, you may not. Who cares? He's a fucking legend. Right. Well, here goes. A few days after the incident with the Nekocreature, Liam and Shadow were all set to leave the hotel to attend GDQ. Liam seemed to have forgotten about the incident, as such a tiny creature was no match for him, and wasn't worthy of taking up any room in his thoughts. Shadow, on the other hand, was shaken. She couldn't get the creature's horrible yellow eyes out of her head, and whenever she closed her eyes, all she could see was its dirty loincloth swinging in the breeze. She had woke up in terror the night before, screaming, "No, not my vagine! Stay away!" Luckily, Liam was there to cradle her in his warm, muscular arms. They made their way through the hotel lobby and out into the sunshine. They didn't need a car or a taxi, as Liam simply got on all fours and allowed Shadow to ride on his back. He moved like a huge, beautiful, muscular cheetah. Shadow had to hold on tight as she could. Liam sprinted along the road on all fours towards the GDQ building at almost 200 miles per hour, simply knocking the traffic out of his way as he went. They arrived at the GDQ building and swiftly made their way inside and towards the Epic Gamer Conference. The stench inside the building was unbearable. The smell of rotting fish and cheese dick all mixed into one, forming a putrid stench that raped one's nostrils. The building was packed with all sorts of chubby nerds, all armed with their man-bags, jewels, and pimple-covered faces. Liam used 0.000001% of his power to form a protective force field around himself and Shadow, protecting them from the stench and the milady monsters. They made their way into the Epic Gamer Conference and took their seats. All the while, Shadow couldn't get the image of the Neko monster's horrible yellow eyes out of her head. "I've seen those eyes before," she thought to herself, as she watched Ninja walk out onto the Epic Gamer stage dressed as Loot Llama. "Yes, I've seen that creature before. But where?" Liam put his arm around her. It felt like a steel beam pressed down on her shoulder, and she felt her girl winker getting big and... No, now wasn't the time for that. She needed to remember where she had seen that creature before. She thought about it for a while, long enough for Ninja to finish flossing, when the memory hit her like a ton of bricks. 13 years earlier. It was a cold winter's day. Rain was pouring down, flooding the streets, and there was a storm brewing. 6-year-old Shadow was making her way back from the shop, carrying a tasty bottle of gamer fuel that she would use to aid herself in killing plebs in Call of Duty 4. She wore her favourite yellow coat, with a picture of Liam printed on the back. Shadow wanted to ride Liam like a horsey, and she had the hood pulled up to protect her hair from the rain. She skipped merrily along, and just as her house came into view down the street, she tripped and fell flat on her face. That's what she got for not tying the shoelaces on her Machinima-sponsored gamer boots. She landed with an oof, and the gamer fuel flew out of her hand, rolled towards the curb, and was lost down a storm drain. "No!" Shadow screamed. She crawled towards the storm drain. A sad gamer tear rolled down her cheek. She stared into the darkness of the storm drain, icy cold water trickling through her fingers and down into the darkness. She could see nothing. "How am I supposed to clutch search and destroy rounds now?" she whimpered in defeat, hot tears rolling down her cheeks. She was about to get up when 2 blue eyes appeared out of the darkness. Shadow yelled and jumped back, startled. "Hiya, cutesies," a voice said. The blue eyes came closer, and now she could make out a pale face in the darkness. "This is some very tasty G-Fuels, yes, the voice whispered. "Must have tumbled out of the cutesie's pockets, as..." The pale creature grinned at Shadow. "Would you like it back, precious?" the creature asked politely. Shadow hesitated, but nodded, and moved closer to the storm drain. Yes, please, she said, and forced herself to smile. The creature smiled. You looks like a cool gamer. I'll bet you have lots of gamer friends, precious. Shadow nodded. Oh yes, I've lots of gamer friends, but my best gamer friend is Liam. The creature seemed to shift uncomfortably. Oh, that's good, cutesies. And this Liam's is he a boy? Shadow was confused as to why the creature would ask such a strange question, but decided to answer anyway. She didn't want to be rude. Oh, yes, he's a boy. My boyfriend, actually. The creature seemed to make a faint hissing sound then, although it was hard to hear over the sound of the rain. Oh, I see, cutesies, the creature whispered. Its orange eyes glared up at her, making her feel uncomfortable. Wait, orange eyes? She thought to herself. Weren't they blue just a minute ago? No, they must have always been orange. Shadow may only be 6 years old, but she was still old enough to understand that people couldn't just change the colours of their eyes at will. Except maybe for Liam, if he used 0.0000001% of his power. And this Liam's, where is he? Oh, he's in my house, getting his diamond rank on Overwatch. We're both diamond now. Shadow grinned happily. Diamonds? Precious is still stuck on bronzes, the creature whispered. Shadow giggled at this. The creature hissed angrily and Shadow drew back, startled. What's wrong with bronzes? The creature asked angrily. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm sure you're a very cool gamer. The creature studied Shadow for a moment, and then it grinned. Relief washed over her body. Anyway, Shadow asked, once again getting closer to the storm drain, what are you doing in the stinky gay old sewer? Stinksers! This is my homesers! The creature growled. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean it stinks of, epicness? The creature grinned. Really? Precious always wanted to be epicers. Shadow laughed, delighted that the creature was no longer angry at her. So, what's your name? My name is Neko, the creature said. Neko the dancing cuckold. The creature bowed, as it did so, Shadow caught a glimpse of her G-Fuel, which was clenched in its right hand. And your name, cutesies? Shadow. She couldn't take her eyes off of the G-Fuel, and the Neko creature caught her gaze. Oh, the cutesies wants the precious back, yes? Well, if the cutesy wants the precious, cutesy will have to give us kisses, yes? The creature puckered its cracked lips. Shadow vomited in her mouth, but quickly swallowed it back down before the Neko creature could notice. Well, gives us kisses then, cutesies. Well, I guess. Shadow leaned down towards the storm drain, the creature's skank lips getting closer. The creature's lips were puckered, its eyes closed. Shadow saw it as an opportunity to grab the G-Fuel before the creature could kiss her, and then run away as fast as she could. She reached out towards the G-Fuel, and just as she grabbed hold of it, the Neko creature's warm, moist tongue entered through her lips and started licking the roof of her mouth. Shadow gagged and snapped the G-Fuel out of the creature's hand as fast as she could. The creature shrieked and shot her hand out of the storm drain, gripping Shadow's hair just before she could get out of reach. Gives it to me! The creature shrieked. Gives me your puss, cuties! Its eyes had turned red, its mouth open, showing off dozens of razor-sharp fangs. Get off me! Shadow screamed and tugged her head away. There was a ripping noise as a clump of her hair was ripped from her scalp. She ignored the pain, got to her feet, and ran as fast as she could. The creature shrieked from the depths of the sewer, its spine-chilling wheeze echoing throughout the street. Shadow ran and didn't look back until she was at her front door. Present day, GDQ. The memory came as a shock, and she felt tears in her eyes. Even Liam's huge muscles around her shoulders couldn't comfort her. How did I forget that? She wondered to herself, and came to the conclusion that her child mind must have repressed it. Until now. The GDQ event finished, and later that evening, Liam and Shadow were at the airport, boarding their flight to get back to Liam's gigantic mansion back in the UK. He didn't spend any money to get it built, he just willed it into existence using his power. Nobody sat in the same row as Liam, as he needed all 3 chairs for all his huge muscles to fit in. In fact, nobody sat on the same side as Liam at all. He was sat on the right side of the plane, and due to his muscle mass, the plane would be lopsided unless all the other passengers sat on the left to act as a counterweight. Shadow was sat on her own in her own row, and as the plane took off, she gazed out of the window into the night sky, the Nekocreature on her mind. She could see the wing of the plane quite well from this seat. Liam pulled his gaming laptop out of his bag, booted it up, and started a run on Resident Evil 2. The passengers would always know when he fucked up the run, as there would be an almighty roar of anger, and the entire plane would shake violently as he slammed his fist down on the seat in front of him. About midway through the flight, Shadow felt her eyelids getting heavy. She sat back in her seat and closed her eyes. The image of the dirty loincloth popped into her head, and as she opened her eyes immediately, a sick feeling in her stomach. "Looks like I won't be getting any sleep any time soon," she thought to herself, and gazed out of the window. Her breath stopped. She felt fear overcome her. There was a creature crawling along the wing of the plane, a pale creature with yellow eyes, and a dirty loincloth flapping rapidly in the wind, exposing the creature's winker. It was Neko. The creature met her eyes through the window and grinned at her. It raised its right hand and put its thumb and forefinger together to make an O shape, and it started to rapidly poke its other forefinger through the O-shaped hole. Dread overwhelmed Shadow. The creature then made a V sign with one hand, brought it up to its mouth, and started waggling its tongue through the V-shaped gap. The Nekocreature winged at her, and then, to her horror, it started to rip apart the panels on the wing. It was trying to crash the plane. Shadow cried for help, and a stewardess came running. "There's something on the wing! It's trying to crash the plane! It's on the wing!" she cried. The stewardess looked out through the window, and then back at Shadow. "Mom, there's nothing out there. You must have dreamt it." Shadow looked back out towards the wing of the plane. There was nothing there. The stewardess walked off, leaving Shadow to sit and wonder what the hell was going on. There was a tap on the window then, startling her. She looked out and saw the Nekocreature was back, although this time it had removed its loincloth completely and was rubbing its infected-looking winker all over the glass. It took a few steps away from the window and started to thrust its crotch in Shadow's direction, its winker swinging with each thrust. It tore apart more of the wing. Smoke began to bellow out into the night sky. "It's gonna make us crash!" Shadow yelled. There was a small explosion, and the wing was now in flames. The plane shook violently and began to descend. Everything went black. She unbuckled herself from the seat and made her way out of the wreckage, holding her breath as to not choke on the thick smoke. There was a whirring sound coming from her left. It was one of the engine turbines. It was still turning at a decent speed, but not as fast as it had been when fully functioning. Shadow stumbles past it. Her legs ache and her eyes stung. "Liam?" she managed to shout. No answer. She fell to her knees, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Liam?" she shouted again. This time there was a reply. "Cutesies!" It came from behind her. She span around just in time to see the Nekocreature crawling out of the wreckage. It was covered in blood. Half of its face had been melted off from the explosion. "Cutesies!" Its voice was garbled, almost unintelligent, as if its throat were clogged with blood. It stumbled towards her, its eyes fixed on Shadow's gigantic quadruple D bobs. "Gives us the bobs," the creature gargled. It stumbled towards her, seemingly on the brink of death.
Go away,
Shadow screamed.
Why don't you just fuck off and die?
The Nekocreature snarled, its fangs glistening.
Gives us the bobs, cutesies.
It raised both hands, palms facing towards Shadow, and started making squeezing motions as it licked its bloodied lips.
You want my bobs, you fucker?
Shadow screamed in anger. She took off her shirt and undid her bra, releasing her gigantic bobs. They looked like two bowling balls attached to a mannequin. She dangled her bra in front of the creature. Its eyes were fixated on it. Its eyes lit up with joy. Pieces of rotten flesh began to fall off its winker as it swelled with blood.
Gives us it. Precious is horny.
The creature charged at her then, and as it did, Shadow quickly threw the bra into the wreckage's flames. The Nekocreature screamed and jumped in after it. It grasped the bra as it was quickly engulfed in the flames. It shrieked with agony, pathetically attempting to sniff the bra before it was eaten away by the flames.
It burns us.
It shrieked in agony.
It burns as precious as skin.
The Nekocreature's skin blistered and melted away. One of its eyes popped in its socket. The bra was nothing but ash now, and the creature turned its attention towards Shadow, who watched with horror. The flaming creature began to crawl towards her, pus oozing from its skin.
Gives us tendies,
it shrieked, although now its vocal cords had almost been burnt away, and understanding its words were almost impossible.
Gives us tendies, be them crispy or from Wendy's.
On this last word, the creature collapsed completely and started twitching violently. A few seconds later, it was completely still, the flames eating away at its mangled body. Shadow collapsed to the floor and burst into tears. She felt completely alone. She just wanted Liam's giant muscles around her, comforting her, and there was a piercing shriek. Shadow looked up in time to see the flaming Nekocreature charging at her, its barbecued winker erect and ready. Shadow closed her eyes and waited for the inevitable. But as she did, the creature suddenly stopped and started floating in the air. At first she was confused, but then she realized it was Liam. He came out of the wreckage, pointing at the Nekocreature as it levitated. Of course, Shadow thought. Liam is using his telekinesis. How could I forget? The creature screamed, unable to move as it floated in the air. Liam's eyes began to glow as he channeled his power. He folded the Nekocreature in half, snapping its spine as it shrieked in pain. Liam used his other hand to point towards the engine turbine, and as he channeled his power into it, the turbine began to spin at full speed.
Begone, foul creature!
Liam's voice thundered, and using his telekinesis, he threw the Nekocreature into the turbine, chopping the foul thing into a million pieces, like some kind of golem soup. Liam stopped channeling his power, and Shadow ran towards him, falling into his arms. Epilogue. They stood on the beach on the island, as Liam channeled his power to his feet.
This shall help us get home, sugar tits,
he said in his smooth, buttery, sexy voice. Shadow could feel something dripping down her thighs, and it wasn't Gamer Girl pee. Liam stepped out into the water, but did not sink. It was as if he were standing on solid ground.
Who do you think taught Jesus how to do this?
Liam asked. Shadow was speechless, her gamer nipples erect.
Hop on, sex kitten,
he said. She hopped onto his back, and using 0.0000001% of his power, Liam began to sprint across the water at 500 miles per hour. He speed ran the Atlantic, and they were home just in time for Bloodborne and Chill. The end. Whoop. We fucking made it. Oof.